Hello, frequency finders. Welcome back to what I am now calling Echoes in the Static. We used to be the Saturday Seance. We are now Echoes in the Static. This is the second episode. I'm Lux, your storyteller for this episode. Before we get started, I'll read the content warnings. This episode may contain depictions of violence, blood, gore, graphic injury, wartime imagery, death, skeletal or human remains, body horror, food scarcity and deprivation, and cannibalism. Viewer and listener discretion are advised. Looking at our first and second stories of the evening, this week we're exploring the history surrounding a figure or figures in Japanese folklore and mythology, the Gashadokuro. In mythology, the Gashadokuro have been described as giant skeletons made from the bones of dead soldiers who attack and devour all in their path. They do not need to eat for sustenance and are often tied to stories of revenge, war, and famine. They're considered a type of yokai, or a supernatural entity or spirit found in Japanese folklore. The first known depiction of the Gashadokuro can be seen on an ukiyo-e woodblock triptych, which is an art piece divided into 3 parts in the ukiyo-e art style, which is a style that was popular during the 17th through 19th centuries. Here, I have a copy of this woodblock for you all to look at. So, this woodblock was created by Japanese artist Utagawa Kuniyoshi, who lived from the years of 1798 to 1861, and is considered one of the last masters of this style of art. In this image, a princess recites a spell written on a hand scroll which summons the Gashadokuro to attack the men in the artwork. This artwork tells the story of Takiyasha hime, daughter of a provincial magnate and samurai, Taira no Masakado, during the Heian period in Japan. For context, the Heian period lasted from around 794 to around 1185 CE. Masakado is known for leading the first recorded uprising against the central Japanese government in Kyoto. Unfortunately, Masakado meets an early demise during battle. Mourning her father and seeking vengeance for his demise, the protagonist of our second story, Masakado's daughter, Takiyasha hime, conjures the Gashadokuro from the bones of the dead to attack those who killed her father. First, I'm going to read an entry for Gashadokuro found on yokai.com. After exploring more about the Gashadokuro, I will share stories and information related to Taira no Masakado, his life, and death. Then I will tell the story of Takiyasha hime. Both of these can also be found on yokai.com, and all readings will be shared in the description for this episode. Getting started with the first story or first reading for Gashadokuro. The entry for Gashadokuro on yokai.com says that the Gashadokuro are skeletal giants which wander around the countryside in the darkest hours of night. Their teeth chatter and bones rattle with the gachi-gachi sound of the yokai's namesake, but they are not always noisy. If they should happen upon a human out late on the roads, the Gashadokuro will silently creep up and catch their victims, crushing them in their hands or biting off their head. Soldiers whose bodies rot in the fields and victims of famine who die unknown in the wilderness or rarely receive proper funerary rites are said to be the origin of the Gashadokuro or make up the Gashadokuro. People unable to pass on. Their souls are reborn as ghosts, longing eternally for that which they once had. These people die with anger and pain in their hearts. That energy remains long after their flesh is rotted from their bones. As their bodies decay, their anger ferments into a grudge against the living, which twists them into a supernatural force. When the bones of hundreds of victims gather together into one mass, they form the humongous skeletal monster known as the Gashadokuro. Too large and powerful to be killed, Gashadokuro maintain their existence until the energy and malice stored up in their bodies has completely burnt out. However, because of the large amount of dead bodies required to form a single one, these abominations are rarer today than they were in the past, when wars and famine were a part of everyday life. In legends, the earliest record of the Gashadokuro goes back over 1,000 years to a bloody rebellion against the central government by a samurai named Taira no Masakado. His daughter Takiyasha hime was a famous sorceress. When Masakado was eventually killed for his revolt, his daughter continued his cause. Using her black magic, she summoned a great skeleton from the bodies of dead soldiers to attack the city of Kyoto. Her monster is depicted in a famous print by Utagawa Kuniyoshi. That's the woodblock that we looked at earlier. So, that is what yokai.com has to say about the Gashadokuro. So moving on to the story or information behind Taira no Masakado's life and what happened with him. Taira no Masakado was a samurai of the Heian period, a powerful warrior and a great leader. He was born either in the late 800s or early 900s CE, and he was killed in around 940 CE. After his death, his spirit is said to have returned as a vengeful ghost and brought destruction across the country, along with Emperor Sotoku and Sugawara no Michizane. He is one of the Nihon Sandai Onryo, the 3 great Onryo of Japan. Though Taira no Masakado's birth date is unknown, he is believed to have been born sometime around when Sugawara no Michizane died. A Meiji period biography of Taira no Masakado suggests that he may have been Sugawara no Michizane's reincarnation. His revolt against the emperor may actually have been a continuation of Michizane's curse. Taira no Masakado was born into the Kanmu Heishi. The clan of Taira descended from the Emperor Kanmu. It was an elite family. Masakado had a privileged childhood in the capital, after which he settled down in Shimosa province in eastern Japan, northeast of modern-day Tokyo. His troubles only began after his father died. Inheritance laws at this time were not firmly established, and his uncles tried to steal most of his father's land. They claimed their royal lineage gave them right to do so. In 935 CE, the dispute with his family members broke into outright battle. Masakado was ambushed by one of his uncles and a number of Minamoto warriors, but Masakado was a powerful warrior. He quickly defeated them and then took his revenge by burning their lands, ravaging the countryside, and slaughtering thousands. This brought him into conflict with other relatives by blood and by marriage, who brought their dispute to the emperor. Taira no Masakado was brought to court to answer for the charges against him brought by the relatives of the dead Minamoto warriors. Masakado was not only brave, he was also smart. He had taken great pains to remain within the law and proved that he had good reason for his killings. After only a few months, he was fully pardoned when the court offered a general amnesty in commemoration of Emperor Suzaku's coming of age. Taira no Masakado returned to his home, but soon found himself under attack. This time, it was his father-in-law and his relatives. Again, Masakado quickly defeated them. To avoid stirring up more political trouble, Masakado received a warrant to apprehend his attackers. Now, with legal sanction for his military action, he stormed into their lands on a quest for revenge. In 938 CE, Taira no Masakado received another court summons for questioning about a quarrel with one of the cousins who had attacked him. This time, Masakado ignored the summons. He raised a large force and invaded Hitachi province. He conquered 8 provinces: Shimotsuke, Kozuke, Musashi, Kazusa, Awa, Sagami, Izu, and Shimosa. The whole time, he maintained his innocence, insisting that his campaign was legal under the terms of his warrant. The government was seen as ineffectual and the nobles as abusive by the peasants of the time. Taira no Masakado, on the other hand, treated the peasants of his conquered domains much better than the former masters did. His insurrection was seen as a salvation by many peasants. They welcomed him gladly. The court feared that Taira no Masakado was preparing to overthrow the government and declare himself the new emperor of Japan. He was condemned as a rebel and a traitor. A number of warriors, including Masakado's ally, Fujiwara no Hidesato, and some of his own relatives, were commissioned by the government to take his head. They caught up with Masakado's army in Shimosa province on the 14th day of the second month of 940 CE. They attacked during the night and ambushed and quickly defeated the rebels. Masakado's men were outnumbered 10-1. Masakado was beheaded, betrayed by his friends and family. The head was brought back to Kyoto to be displayed in the East Market as a message to would-be rebels. Strangely, Taira no Masakado's head did not decompose. Many months after it was first displayed in the East Market, it still looked fresh as the day it was severed. The eyes had grown fiercer, and the mouth twisted up into a hideous grimace. Night after night, the head would call out, "Where is my murdered body? Come here! Reattach my head and let me fight once again." And then things got really strange. One night, the head began to glow. It flew off into the sky, across the country, toward Shimosa. The head eventually grew tired and landed to rest in a fishing village called Shibazaki, which would one day grow into the city of Edo. The villagers who found the head cleaned it and buried it. A shrine was erected over the grave named Kubizuka, the mound of the head. Masakado was honored and worshipped by the peasants as a true warrior, a symbol of justice who stood in heroic defiance of a corrupt and lazy nobility. He was seen as an underdog who was repeatedly betrayed and eventually murdered by those he should have been able to trust. Despite his deification and popularity among the lower classes, his ghost was not appeased. A few years after his head was buried, the ghost of a samurai began to be seen in the neighborhood of his shrine. In the early 1300s, a great plague struck Edo. Many people died. The plague was attributed to Taira no Masakado's anger. In order to appease him, his spirit was moved from his small shrine to the larger and more prestigious Kanda shrine. He was designated one of the main gods, and his spirit was placated for a while. In 1874, Emperor Meiji visited the Kanda shrine. It was viewed as inappropriate for an enemy of the imperial family like Masakado to be honored with the emperor visiting, and so his deity status was revoked. His shrine was moved to a smaller building outside of the main shrine. Taira no Masakado's anger returned in 1928. After the Great Kanto earthquake destroyed much of the city, the site of his Kubizuka was chosen as the temporary location for the Ministry of Finance. Shortly afterwards, the Minister of Finance became sick and died. Over a dozen other employees died, and even more became sick or were injured in falls and accidents in the building. Rumors about the curse began to spread. The Ministry of Finance building was demolished, and a memorial service for Masakado was held at the Kanda shrine. Throughout the 20th century, a number of other accidents, fires, sickness, and other mysterious sightings were attributed to the curse of Taira no Masakado. Each time, purification rituals were performed. Finally, in 1984, in response to public pressure, his deity status was reinstated. Today, great pains are taken not to anger his ghost. For example, it is common practice for television stations to visit the grave of his head, still located in what is now Otamachi, Tokyo. They pay their respects to him before his character appears on any show. The Kubizuka is maintained by an organization of local businesses and volunteers who have taken the responsibility of the upkeeping of his grave. So that's interesting in that to this day people still believe in the curse of Taira Masakado and are still working to make sure that that does not affect people. Last but not least, here is the story of Takiyasha hime, Masakado's vengeful daughter. Takiyasha hime is the daughter of Taira no Masakado and a sorceress who raised an army of yokai and attempted to conquer Japan. Her story became popular in the Edo period and is depicted in novels Woodblock Prince and Kabuki. The details of her story vary quite a bit from version to version. After Taira no Masakado was defeated and his rebellion quashed, the imperial court declared Masakado's entire family to be traitors and ordered their execution. 2 of Masakado's children, Yoshikado and Satsuki hime, somehow managed to escape their execution. They remained in hiding at a temple at the base of Mount Tsukuba for years. Satsuki hime became a devoted nun, but her brother was not interested in religion. He spent his time exploring the mountain and playing at being a samurai. One day, while exploring Mount Tsukuba, Yoshikado encountered a mysterious wizard named Nikushisen. Nikushisen informed Yoshikado that he was the heir of Taira no Masakado and gave him a magic scroll containing the secrets of frog magic. Yoshikado returned to his sister and told her everything Nikushisen had said. He gave her the scroll, she studied it, and also became master of frog magic, and took the name Takiyasha hime. The 2 of them decided to fulfill their father's dream of overthrowing the emperor and ushering in a new order. In a different version of the story, instead of Yoshikado meeting Nikushisen, Satsuki hime secretly began to perform the dreaded curse, Ushi no Koku Mairi, the shrine visit at the hour of the ox. Each night, she snuck into the Kifune shrine and performed the ritual. After 21 nights, she awakened the Aramitama, the violent, wicked spirit of the Kifune shrine. The Aramitama spoke to her, granting her the knowledge of Onmyodo and instructing her to take the name Takiyasha hime. Takiyasha hime and Yoshikado returned to their father's fortress of the Soma Castle in Shimosa province. They called on the surviving soldiers who remained loyal to their father's cause. Using her newly acquired black magic, Takiyasha hime raised an army of yokai to continue her father's rebellion against the emperor. Oya no Taru Mitsukuni, a warrior who was knowledgeable about Onmyodo, had heard of Takiyasha hime's plans and set out to Soma Castle to investigate if the rumors were true. When he arrived, Takiyasha hime disguised herself as a prostitute and tried to seduce Mitsukuni. However, Mitsukuni suspected a trap and told her about the brutal death of Taira no Masakado. Takiyasha hime could not contain her emotion, and she fled from Mitsukuni. That night she ambushed him with an army of skeletons and yokai. According to Utagawa, Kuniyoshi's famous ukiyo-e print, Takiyasha hime unleashed a Gashadokuro upon him, a gigantic skeleton as tall as a castle. Riding into battle on top of a giant toad, Takiyasha hime assaulted the brave warrior Mitsukuni. In the end, despite her magic, she was defeated just as her father was. Her short rebellion was snuffed out just as his was. Today, many statues of frogs decorate Taira no Masakado's gravesite in Kubizuka. The Japanese word for frog, kairu, is a homophone of the word meaning return. Masakado's severed head longed to return to his hometown, and patrons hope that Masakado's spirit will kairu, or return to heaven, and not cause any more harm on earth. It's also said that this reflects the frog magic that Nikushisen taught to his daughter, Takiyasha hime. So that's what we have for Takiyasha hime. Our third story of the night is a related tale from the Nihon Ryoiki, a Buddhist collection of Japanese myths and folklore from the Heian period. The story is often connected to the Gashadokuro, even being cited in writing by famed manga artist Shigeru Mizuki, who is known for his work with yokai and Japanese folklore. However, the skeleton in this story is confirmed to not be a Gashadokuro. Regardless, since it's one of the best known stories that is attributed, even if mistakenly, to the Gashadokuro myth, I want to share it with you. The source for this story will also be in the description for the episode. So the name of this story is On an Extraordinary Sign of a Skull Shown to the Man Who Removed a Bamboo Shoot from its Eye and Prayed for It. In the reign of Emperor Shirakabe, at the end of the 12th month in the winter of the 5th year of the horse, the 9th year of the Hoki era, Homuchi no Makihido, from the village of Oyama, Ashida District, Bingo Province, traveled to the Fukatsu District, in the same province, to shop for the New Year's celebration. Since it grew dark while he was on the road, he slept in a bamboo grove at Ashida in Ashida District. In the place he chose to spend the night, he heard a plaintive voice say, "How my eye hurts!" Hearing it, he could not sleep all night, though he laid curled upon the ground. The next morning, he discovered a skull with a bamboo shoot growing up and through the eye socket. He pulled out the bamboo, releasing the skull from suffering, and offered it his dried rice, saying, "May I attain good fortune?" At the market, his shopping proceeded as he had wished. He wondered if, in response to his prayer, the skull was repaying his kindness. On the way back from the market, he stayed overnight in the same bamboo grove. Then the skull appeared as a live being, saying, "I am an Anokimi no Odogimi of the village Yanakuni, Ashida District, and I was killed by my wicked uncle, Akimaru. Whenever the wind blew, my eye would hurt terribly. Thanks to your compassion, my suffering has been removed, and I have attained immense joy, and I will never forget your kindness. Being overcome with happiness, I would like to repay you for your kindness. On New Year's Eve, will you visit my home in the village of Yanakuni, where my parents live? That night is the only time I can repay your kindness." More and more, Makihito's wonder increased, and he kept it a secret. On New Year's Eve, he went to the house. Taking his hand, the spirit led him to the house, where they shared the offerings made there and ate together. The spirit wrapped the rest of the offerings and gave them to Makihito, together with some treasures. Then the spirit suddenly disappeared. When the parents who had come to the place to worship the spirits saw Makihito, they were surprised and asked him why he had come, whereupon he told them the whole story in detail. They seized Akimaru and asked why he had killed Otogomi, saying to him, "According to your story, on the way to your market with our son, you met a creditor and forsook our son because the man pressured you for a return of the debt. You asked, 'Did he come home?' We answered, 'Not yet, we haven't seen him.' Why does the story we have heard differ from your story?" Shaken to the bottom of his heart, Akimaru, the robber, could not conceal the facts, and he eventually said, "Toward the end of last year, I went to market with Otogomi in order to shop for New Year's Day. He brought a horse, cloth, cotton, and salt with him. As it got dark on the way, we stopped at the bamboo grove, where I killed him in secret and took his belongings. I went to the Fukatsu market to sell his horse to a man from Sanuki province, and now I'm using the rest of his things myself." Having heard this, the parents said, "Ugh, our dear son was killed by you and not by robbers?" Since sons of the same parents are as close to them as a reed to a rush, they concealed the brother's sin, banishing him but not making it public. They thanked Makihito and offered him more food and drink. When he returned, he related his story. Even a skull exposed to the sun is like this. It repays a food offering with good fortune and benevolence with benevolence. Therefore, how could a man forget benevolence? This is what the Neon Go means when it says, man repays benevolence which he has received with benevolence. That was the end of On an Extraordinary Sign of a Skull Shown to the Man Who Removed a Bamboo Shoot from its Eye and Prayed for It. So that was very different from our other stories. And again, it wasn't expressly a Gashadokuro, but this story does often get mentioned with Gashadokuro stories and has been cited in writings, or I think books even alongside Gashadokuro, including, like I said earlier, in Shigeru Mizuki's work. He also included the story alongside Gashadokuro. So even though it's not the same, this story does get cited a lot, and when it comes to written stories, it may be cited the most that I could find. When it comes to older stories, in comparison to other stories that talk about Gashadokuro, which a lot are in modern media and by manga artists that I found, so a lot more modern retellings of them. But I hope that you enjoyed those stories for tonight. Thank you for joining me for tonight's stories. You can join me every other weekend for new episodes of Echoes in the Static, where I share spooky stories, folklore, and myths that delve into the strange, spooky, and the macabre. We are now on Spotify, so if you would like to check it out on Spotify and listen there, or follow there, give it a rating, please do. See you next time, Frequency Finders.